Welcome back to the show, everybody. Check out these headlines. We got Coinbase fighting the SEC. We got Securitize CEO at Consensus. We got Antony Welfare talking about the public XRP ledger. You're going to want it. We got Ripple's Q1 report for 2023 and Brad Garlinghouse. You're going to want all of that. And XRP technical analyst gives us a definition of kaboom. Oh, really? Somebody roll that beautiful intro.
Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. You can follow us on Twitter and YouTube for exclusive content. Right now, $1.25 trillion market cap for crypto. The market is up 0.9%. Bitcoin, 29,300 plus. Ethereum, 1907 and change. Tether market cap is 81.6 billion plus, ladies and gentlemen. 47 cents for XRP this morning. It's up 3.3% on the 24-hour, but 0.4 off on the 7-day. So let's get a look at this. Oh, you know what? And before we get started, I wanted to show you this right here. It's linked to, ladies and gentlemen, their new ATS, alternative trade system, is in place and it's working. The soft launch has happened and it's off and running, ladies and gentlemen. Don't forget, you can get linked to, you can get Ripple, you can get PolySign, and until just a day or so ago, you could have got Chainalysis, you could have gotten Uphold or Zipline or Carbon or all these other incredible products that are here, but you got to be accredited. But let me tell you something, if you don't know that you are, you may be surprised that you could already be accredited, you and your spouse. So make sure you check it out. Click the link underneath the video. Don't mess around. You may even find that you got some link to bucks coming to you. Link underneath the video. Right here, we start with Paul Grewal here. It says, releases a public video addressing the hypocrisy and unclear regulatory framework from the SEC. Let's hear it from Paul right here.
So I want to be very direct with you. Coinbase does not list securities. We use a robust process based on SEC guidance to make sure that we don't list securities. We reject some 90% of the assets that we review. It might be better for our short-term business to be less conservative than we are, but that is not who we want to be as a company. That's why, as proud as we were when we became a U.S. public company just 2 years ago, we were just as disappointed to receive the Wells notice from the SEC a few weeks ago. In the past 2 years, Coinbase's business really has not changed in any fundamental way. We remain just as committed to following the rules and engaging collaboratively with the SEC on the best way to regulate our industry. So I want to be very direct.
There you have that, but we got another clip here too where it gets a little more stern. Take a listen to this.
Coinbase will defend itself vigorously in litigation if it comes to that. But it does not have to come to that. We will show up at your offices any day, any time to discuss a workable path forward for our industry. But we won't find that path without true dialogue.
And that is the truth there, no doubt about it. But we know how it rolls, right? We know that Gary Gensler says you come in and see us or you have your lawyers come in and see us. That in itself is an admission that you're a security. Something has to be done. There's no question about it. SEC and Gary Goldman Gensler need to be put back in their lane, respectively, when it comes to regulation. Here we see a comment from Carlos Domingo, the CEO of Securitize, and I want to tell you, I think this points towards everything that I am excited about in this market, or certainly a majority of what I'm looking forward to. Listen to what he says here.
So look, like a blockchain at the end of the day is a very good ledger, right? It's a very good ledger that has been designed to be cryptographically secure and being able to represent asset ownership and transfer the ownership in an efficient way, right? So if you think about what capital markets are, at the end of the day, they are, a securities and entry on a ledger that says you own, 10 shares of Apple, and when you want to trade it, you have to modify another ledger that says you have $10 in the Citibank account, and then you have to swap them, right? So the lack of a good ledger where you can represent securities and cash, let's say using stable coins, and move them efficiently and track the ownership of those things in an efficient way is actually very problematic in capital markets. So,
I tell you, Carlos knows what's going on. I can tell you that. Shout out to him and Securitize. The lack of a good ledger is prominent in the capital markets. Ding, 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 ding. Let me tell you something. I got alarms going off in the best way all over the place here. First of all, I'm thinking about what PolySign is geared up to do with custody, right? Number two, I'm seeing what Securitize themselves are doing, being able to tokenize the industry and get them into this digital market to begin with. Then I start thinking Interledger Protocol, XRP Ledger, these things help to solve exactly what he's talking about. And then the macro picture. The macro picture is it's about tokenizing the capital markets. That is the larger part of the world and the things that already exist, the products that already exist in the world. I get very excited. Shout out to Carlos for highlighting that. And because he's highlighting it, we may just as well play Antony Welfare here, who is talking, and he is going to tell you about the benefits and how the financial system will be quicker, smarter, cheaper with CBDCs, and obviously the help of XRP and Ripple.
I think, from Ripple's perspective, this is an amazing time because real projects do real solutions using blockchain payments technologies happening, and we see it. You've got people here who, really understand that there is a technology that can be used and there is a future for it. So central bank issued currency doesn't necessarily mean that the central bank wants to monitor and manage all your transactions. What they want to do is improve the financial system and make it quicker, smarter, cheaper, and more efficient for the people. They want to make sure that people in parts of the country with, no banking system, branches, for example, can still do banking like you could in a city. So there's lots of really good benefits of a CBDC, and I mentioned fractional payments and things like that, settling securities immediately, things like that. There's massive benefits. What the central banks are looking at and talking about is, there's a couple of big issues that are sort of challenges to be fixed at the moment. One is interoperability. So if you have a digital euro and a digital pound on a different network, well, it's still not going to work. It's still, so we don't expect them to be on the same platforms because each country is different, each jurisdiction, but we still need to do the interoperability in the middle. For us, that's brilliant because we're a cross-border company. We've spent 10 years building the technology that is cross-border with current systems. So we're looking forward to sort of helping them show how that can work with CBDC to old fiat or fiat to crypto or any of these different mixes that's going to happen in and around the CBDCs. And then, you've mentioned privacy. Privacy is very important, and the technology can do many different things with privacy, from making the transaction completely secure to making it completely open. That's the point of blockchain DLTs. Governments are working on what they want and how they want it to work, and it will be very different in different countries, and what they need for their people is the important part. So the ECB, for example, has said very clearly a number of times privacy is their number one concern and their number one area to look at, and that's been since day one. They're doing lots of work and projects. So what it looks like in the end, I don't know, but they're well aware of it, and it's a very important topic that it will come out through the processes over the next few years.
And we're looking forward to it coming out over the process over the next few years. And you know what? Here's a little hint of what's already happening right now, and you're going to love every bit of it. And towards the end of this, you're going to hear the one and only Darren Moore, who you should be following if you're not for some reason. But I tell you what, listen to what is said here, and you're going to hear him talk about the public XRP ledger. Listen here.
So what are we learning? So we've got 2 announced projects, and then we've got 5 under NDA. Royal Monetary Authority of Bhutan is a real CBDC. So there's a central bank, and they've issued a currency, and that's very much at decent stages at the moment. And Palau is actually a US dollar stablecoin. So Palau has its own government, but no central bank. So they use the US dollar. So we're issuing, on the public blockchain, on the public XRP ledger, a USD stablecoin for this.
Wow, on the public XRP ledger. Can we catch that again?
Its own government, but no central bank. So they use the US dollar. So we're issuing on the public blockchain, on the public XRP ledger, a USD stablecoin for this country to use. That's actually quite interesting for innovation, because there's other things can be done with that.
Palau is issuing a dollar stablecoin on the XRP ledger. You just heard it out of Antony Welfare's mouth, yet I hear people trying to argue that it's not. You just heard it out of his mouth. That's what he said. It's going to be issued on the XRP ledger.
There you go. And that's what I'm hearing too. You know, I can tell you, the one thing that's so funny about the people that have attacked me over the years is that when I really think about it, because I don't attack other people. So when I think about it, I think to myself, I'm really just being attacked because I believe Ripple will achieve their goal. And I'm enthusiastic. And I've never lost that enthusiasm. Isn't that amazing? That you can be attacked in a down market by other influencers even, just because you remain positive. You got to love them, because I ain't going to hate them. Right here we have Brad Garlinghouse. We love this guy. He's amazing, man. Look, Ripple Q1 2023 XRP Markets Report is live, ladies and gentlemen, detailing important events, and we're about to get into the highlights of that just now. But one that's made in here is highlighted by Brad Garlinghouse himself. Shout out to him. U.S. may be moving backwards, but I like to focus on the positive. So do I. In the last few months, the EU, UK, and the UAE all moved forward with new regulatory frameworks and regimes for crypto activities. And we are going to take a look at that report, and it's right here, ladies and gentlemen. And here's some of the quick takeaways. Obviously, what Brad had mentioned here about the EU and UK and UAE. New regulatory regimes here. XRPLedger on-chain activity remains strong, with decentralized exchange volumes increasing 34% to 115 million in Q1 23 versus Q4 2022. XRP average daily volume, ADV, on centralized exchanges jumped 46% in Q1 to 1 billion from 698 million. Total XRP sales in Q1 of 2023 for Ripple, net of purchases were 361.06 million versus 226.31 million the previous quarter. How about that, ladies and gentlemen? That is impressive. And I'd like to show you this right here. This is Wrath of Comment said ODL looks healthy enough in Ripple's Q1 2023 report despite the banking crisis. Don't forget about that. But the report makes some interesting mentions to the impact on ODL, which are not fully fleshed out. What we can infer, he goes on to say here. First, notice the brief mention of ODL disruption. The big news of the quarter was the banking crisis and the negative impact with crypto liquidity, which also led to some disruption to liquidity available for ODL through customer flows recover quickly. If you notice in the highlight here, the big news of the quarter was the banking crisis and negative impact on crypto, liquidity available to ODL through customer flows recover quickly. ODL remains robust and continues to serve customer flow, facilitate cross-border payments in a low-cost, timely, and reliable method thanks to redundancy and sustainability planning. While there is no denying the industry is facing strong headwinds, Ripple continues to be laser focused on minimizing the impact of banking crisis on our partners and providing the best experience for its customers. It goes on to say here, total sales by Ripple net purchases. Go over the details here, as you can see. Second, discussing the sales day note, due to circumstances of the banking crisis, Ripple stopped purchasing XRP for several days due to the disruption since it's resumed, of course. Now, here, I want to show you, this is what I'm excited about here, ladies and gentlemen, the Ripple Q4 report, is the understanding that it did grow, right, from 361 versus the 226 plus that it was the quarter before. But also, Ripple has sourced XRP from the open market to ensure there is sufficient supply of XRP available for our growing ODL business. We continually strive to minimize undue market impact with our purchases by, for example, limiting how much and from whom we purchase XRP. That to me is very, very sound practices, is what I see out of that. It goes on to say, due to the circumstances of the banking crisis, Ripple had stopped purchasing XRP for several days due to disruption. This activity has since resumed. The company expects to continue to undertake purchases as ODL adoption grows. It goes on to say here, if you look at this, the total amount of leases outstanding in Q1 of 2023 was 52 million here. Now, it says here, too, Ripple has stopped the purchases of the activity since expected to continue to undertake purchases as ODL adoption continues. Now, I want to go back here and highlight this, which is simply this. Go Ripple. Doing what everyone says that we aren't allowed to talk about here on social media. Apparently, and it's not trendy. It's not cool to be excited about it, even though the market's down. But I am, and I won't stop it. Just creating reliable bridge currency is what they're doing. That's all. The right way, I will add. Now let's look at this. XRP, the next kaboom. Looking back on history, we're getting a breakdown of what the first kaboom pumped in XRP, around 47,000% from the cross of the 200 MA, consecutively crossing the 300 MA. The second kaboom pumped around 700% from the cross. How much do you think XRP next kaboom will pump the price? Because we don't know. So he's looking for your comment there, if you could chime in. But looking at this, basically measuring the pump that happened back in 2017, 2018, and then here again in late 2021 or whatever, early 21, whatever it was there as well. What do you think it will be? Listen, I think if we're going to see these massive prices, which I think XRP can grow to, it's because of the use case. It's because of the continued adoption. It's because we're going to get clarity at some point here in the U.S. as well. And it's because adoption is taking place in the U.S. to match what is going on around the world. I think it all starts to take off and explode, certainly when we get clarity with the G20, which is working very hard to get to that place as well. Fundamental news, fundamental action happening in the market to recognize the commercial use inside the financial system and the government sectors of the world, central banks included. I tell you, this is exciting for me because I do believe that Ripple will eventually achieve the goal. And some of these booms that we see, we certainly could see history repeat. Maybe it doesn't. But I tell you this, what I'm actually waiting for is an actual level of liquidity and utility to enter this system to where booms are less what we're talking about, and the utility and liquidity that never goes away because they're using the asset and the ledger every single day. That is exciting, just as a kaboom is. And I hope we get the biggest kaboom we've ever seen. That's where I'm at. Shout out to Egg Crypto for everything he does. Not financial advice from him, me, or anyone else. It's just our digital perspectives. I'll catch all of you on the next one.